So take a minute and think about this. Who have you heard say that exclusive games aren't important, or exclusive games are, stuck in like 2005, right? Because this is something that I see a lot of on social media, where people will say, hey, exclusive 2005 called and they want their way back or whatever. The interesting thing to that point is, I would say, who's the one saying that, right? Because the only people I ever see saying anything about exclusives being bad are Xbox people and Microsoft. And it's not all Xbox people, but it's like those hanger-ons that don't think Microsoft do anything wrong, right? I'm sure you guys all know who I'm talking about. It's not taking a shot at anybody. It's just there's like a whole group of people like this, and most of them are on social media. The rest of us are like, well, how can exclusives be bad when they really help differentiate kind of the platform and things like that? I think that's probably how I look about things. It's like that's how you make things look different and appealing, whereas you can get everything that's on Xbox on a PlayStation, plus all the PlayStation stuff that's not on Xbox. So why would anybody get an Xbox? And I think Microsoft doesn't care about that point. And they're coming out, they want to come out with, they'll come out with something, but it'll probably be a very niche PC. And Xbox fans don't fully grasp what that means, right? It's like they're not going to care about this next thing. Developers probably aren't going to care about it, which is why you're going to get one specific version, probably a Windows version or whatever. But it's interesting to hear what people are talking about in terms of exclusives still. Sean Layden, the former head of PlayStation, still says exclusives have a huge value, and the same he says former PlayStation boss Sean Layden has defended full and exclusive games in an era where they've become somewhat rarer. Sean Layden, who led Sony Interactive Entertainment through most of its dominant PS4 generation, recently appeared on the Pause for Thought podcast and had some interesting things to say about the changing ways platform holders treat first-party games. He said, and I quote, "I don't think every game has to be console exclusive. I don't think every game should be console exclusive. But I do accept the fact that if you're going to have a platform companies like Sony and Nintendo, and Microsoft is actually more of an Xbox is everywhere anyway type of thing, there's a huge value to having a brand and having strong exclusives. If Mario starts appearing on PlayStation, that's the apocalypse, right? Cats and dogs living together. And the same goes for Nathan Drake and Uncharted. They make the platform sing." Before noting that multi-platform games code to the lowest denominator, so exclusive games are a good excuse to push every lever to 11. Now, this is the thing that I always point out when it comes to exclusive games, and that is when you have something that's really taking advantage of one platform, you can get the most out of it. And I've always thought like PlayStation's exclusives look like a million miles better than the Xbox ones. And that's not saying that Xbox doesn't have good looking games, but what it is saying is that Xbox has kind of done the least, because they have all these lower common denominators to kind of take advantage of. So it's like you got to do something like the S is already pretty kind of low anyway, but you have PCs even worse than that, right? So I mean, if you think about it, that thing has the same amount of VRAM as the supposed Steam machine. So yeah, it's like low hanging fruit there, and that's really kind of a bad situation to be in anyway. So I do think that it's kind of interesting the way that these things go or whatever, but the fact that you have somebody who was the head of PlayStation, which by the way, anybody could have led PlayStation to a victory with the PS4 over over anything else, because over the Xbox One, because Microsoft really shot themselves in the foot that entire generation. And it's really kind of a weird way to kind of look at things. Like, I would love to see Microsoft to be able to do like exclusive games again, but I don't know if they would, but it would be nice. Layden's comment comes at a time when Xbox is porting pretty much all of its former exclusives to rival consoles, while PlayStation has begun handing games like Helldivers 2, and well, you can look at Helldivers 2 as kind of an outlier. It's a games as a service game. That studio isn't owned by Sony, while the IP is, so they're not going to make a third one. They've already moved on to another multi-plat game. Sony probably just wanted to get as much as they could from that game while they could, but you're never going to see like a God of War or Uncharted come to Xbox. It just wouldn't really make sense. Some PlayStation 5 exclusives hit PC after some time, though. Nintendo definitely isn't interested in sharing any of its games. He says, I think there will be some exclusive titles in the future, but certainly if you're looking for a massive multiplayer game, then you almost have to go multi-platform, because you have to rip that funnel open as wide as possible to get people in there, certainly if you're going free to play. So it's a very kind of interesting thing to this. It's like it's a very interesting way to kind of talk about these things. But for me, I kind of look at it and I say, you've got to have stuff that showcase your platform, right? It's like, I have an older brother who's a couple years older than me, and I just recently visited him, and it's interesting because he has a PlayStation 5, and we were talking a little bit about video games, and he doesn't go on social media, he's not like that type of person, but we were a little bit talking about it, and he's like, yeah, well, he goes, I used to have an Xbox, but what on Xbox has been great, or what on Xbox doesn't come to PlayStation, and so why would I need an Xbox, right? And this is just like an average, like he was what I'd consider an average kind of gamer. Like he spends a lot of times playing like Call of Duty Zombies and like that kind of stuff. But I mean, he has a good amount of games, but like that's the type of gamer he is. And this is like somebody that's not in the know, but he knows enough to know that, hey, Xbox isn't really out there competing or doing these things to draw people in, and so that's pretty much understandable. Plus, we were kind of talking about it, and I was telling him about, he was asking about like how you put the RAM inside the solid state drive, M.2 drive, into the PS5, and I was like, it's super easy, it takes about 2 minutes. And I was showing them, you pop off the side, you take a Phillips screwdriver, unscrew it, pop that in, make sure it has a heat sink, boom, screw it down, you're good to go. And and it's funny because my wife was comparing Xbox to Apple, and she doesn't understand why I'm still using Xbox, and I was like, well, I've got all these thousands of games there, that's one thing, but the other thing is like their proprietary hard drives is really kind of showcasing, that they are sort of like Apple in that way, you know what I mean, where they're kind of forcing people to do. So yeah, like it's very interesting the way that these things come out, and I can understand why people just flock to PlayStation. It's just like plug and play, your friends are there, there's going to have games, you're going to have Xbox games, you're going to have PlayStation games, you're going to have more third-party games. So it is sort of a little bit different situation. It's like Nintendo, they're very cautious with their characters, as I would be, right? And like people go, oh, well, they'll eventually release their stuff elsewhere. I can 100% never see them releasing their games on PC because they already have problems with people like illegally using their games and stuff. Could you imagine Nintendo releasing games on PC and people start modding? That would be like Nintendo's worst nightmare. So I could definitely never see them releasing their games anywhere else. And they sell a ton of their own hardware, which is different and stuff like that. When it comes to PlayStation, I actually think that PlayStation's own first-party stuff will have a good idea with Ghost of Yotei, right? Because that's a true first-party game. We'll see how long it takes for that to come to PC, because I really do think that Sony should relax a little bit on that. Like, I would say never, or 2 years, 3 years later would be a good kind of way to kind of go about things. Wait until you've actually reached the maximum potential of sales on your console, and when those have dried up, then maybe you can kind of release stuff over on the other side. But again, like I said, it really kind of depends on what they want to do, because you want to get people into your ecosystem. And I said this as a warning years ago. I was like, so if Microsoft and Sony are putting all their stuff on PC, then that's going to make some people who are okay with PC like just switch to it, because you're going to get both the best of both worlds. Of course, if you're more of a console gamer, you can just get a PlayStation and get the same kind of effect, but and essentially those kind of kill the reason to have an Xbox in the first place. But you still have people talking up exclusives. I think they're still important. Even if you're just releasing a handful a year, I still think they're vastly important to give you some kind of an edge over what the competition is doing. So anyway, with that being said, I certainly would love to hear your guys' opinions on this topic. As always, it really kind of comes down to what you guys think and what you want to see in the future. Do you guys miss exclusives if you're an Xbox fan? Do you understand how that's helped kill the Xbox console? Because I mean, honestly, it really has. And you know, it's a real shame, because I do think that the Xbox Series X and S are solid consoles, but they're unrealized consoles. So you know, anyway, we'll see what happens. Thanks for watching. Rack 'em up. Crap Gamer out.